Buddha the Basin here. Today is Thursday, July the 31st, 2025. Linda Moulton Howe, human gray hybrids, and deep earth housing. From cattle mutilation to human abduction, the answer is our DNA. This week's Earthfiles episode, titled Are E.T.s Building Deep Earth Housing for Human Gray Hybrids?, featured an interview with Jeff Selver, author of The Rising and the alien plan to build an enlightened city on Earth. The author alleges that grays come from an alternate Earth dimension rather than Zeta Reticuli, as they allegedly told Betty and Barney Hill. Something's not right in their dimension, so there's a plan to merge with our world. Of course, grays have always said that they're trying to help us save the world. Help me help you. They have also claimed at times that they are us from the future, or that they need our DNA because they went astray. I'm not gonna poke fun at a sentient life form. It's not my goal. But this gray individual, was not the quintessential alien form, and is not the only form, and is just, but the gray is the only form who's doing certain things to humanity. That's the point I want to make, but I digress. Now, it's unclear, but when I say our earliest encounters, I mean the 50s. It's hard for us now in 2025 to really think about the Dwight D. Eisenhower administration of the 1950s, not Truman's administration. Now, but you have to kind of go back to go forward. Under the Truman administration, that's when you find the Majestic 12. Okay, the MJ-12 documents, you can look them up. For Magic Eyes Only, 1947, right? Roswell, July. This is under the watch of Harry S. Truman. So the MJ-12 with Vannevar Bush on there, they're the ones who recover the craft and the bodies. And we have the interviews. So we seem to make a deal with the Greys following the recovery of the Roswell crash. Okay, but my point is that the Eisenhower administration later is working with and speaking to a whole different kind of extraterrestrial, one from Venus that is pleasant to look at. His name is Valiant Thor. It's almost amazing now to think about Valiant Thor, because we have the Thor character from the Avengers kind of obscuring this already quasi unbelievable individual that but look him up for yourself. I mean, Valiant Thor or Val Thor from the 50s, from the Dwight D. Eisenhower administration. I mean, you'll get a snapshot quite quickly. Valiant Thor was a humanoid extraterrestrial from the planet Venus who arrived on Earth with a mission to help with advanced technology, to help share advanced technology. You see, it was a time in which humans were being offered advanced technology by more than one extraterrestrial group. This is the thing. The group that the deep state, I don't know why I held my tongue, the Majestic 12 is where the origin of the deep state is. This is the deep of the deep state, came from that that deep connection to the gray extraterrestrials who gave them this technology and gave us semiconductors, amongst other things. The silicon microchip, some say. The magic metal. And it but at what cost? Because you see, it appears as though that what the Greys wanted was our DNA, and apparently cattle. They wanted cattle DNA and human DNA. So let me, before, let's. So I'm just going to give a taste of the Valiant Thor story, just to show you what the original story from the 50s was, before Betty and Barney Hill abduction of 61, before the public consciousness changes, right before the 60s awakening. Okay, and so by the time you get to my generation, the South Park generation, it's the Greys and it's the anal probing and the cattle, and it's all just a big joke in Colorado. But the idea of focusing on Colorado, that's where Linda Moulton Howe did her alien harvest or strange harvest. That was where the cattle were being abducted, you see. So South Park was a deliberate disinformation campaign when it first came out, unfortunately. But I digress. So, the story of Valiant Thor, visitor from Venus. I'm reading from discoveryuk.com. Tales of alien visitations have permeated the public consciousness for decades, but the astonishing story of Valiant Thor, a supposed visitor from Venus in the 1950s, may well be the most outlandish of them all. Who was he? And did he sleep in the Pentagon for 3 years, as some claim? Let's find out. Okay. The primary and the only source for this astonishing story is a book published in 1967 called Stranger at the Pentagon by Frank E. Stranges, a Christian evangelical minister, ufologist, author, and founder of the National Investigations Committee on Unidentified Flying Objects. Okay. So who was Valiant Thor? Let's take a trip back to 1950 to shed light on one of the strangest stories, in the annals of ufology. So, according to the Stranger at the Pentagon, Valiant Thor, an alien from Venus described as an inhumanly handsome man, landed his spacecraft, supposedly named Victory 1, near Alexandria, Virginia, right near D.C. And he's got 2 traveling companions. Okay, so I mean, it's just an interesting story. It's not one. It's one that's right there, the Pentagon. It's just a different time. It's not. Because now we're fighting the aliens. All right, the aliens are abducting us, so we're fighting them. It's not really happening, but we're getting ready to fight their invasion. It's a strange time to be an American, right? It's an ambivalent view, to say the least. All I'm trying to say, all we're saying is give peace a chance, but because most of them are good, and it's just one extraterrestrial being that's been doing this to us, that we need to see the whole situation more clearly. And so we need to think about other individuals who had encounters with extraterrestrials, and their stories are worth noting. One of those is George Van Tassel. He was an American contactee and ufologist and author. He also met extraterrestrials. He was an extraordinary contactee. Okay, he was born in Ohio in 1910. He was a pilot. Let's see here. I Wrote a Flying Saucer. In 1952-1955, recounts his claims of receiving cosmic wisdom from Soganda and a large number of other people from outer space. Yeah, so his publications. Okay, so I Wrote a Flying Saucer. That's what I'm looking for. Yeah. So Van Tassel was a classic 1950s contactee. You see, this is the thing. Before everything changes after Betty and Barney Hill in 1961. That's when it flips. because in the 50s, it's these positive contacts. So Van Tassel was a classic 1950s contactee in the mold of George Adamski, Truman, Bethurum, Daniel Fry, Orfeo, Angelucci, and many others. He hosted the Giant Rock Interplanetary Spacecraft Convention annually beside the Rock from 1953 to 1971, which attracted at its peak in 1959 as many as 10,000 attendees. Guests trekked to the desert by car or landed airplanes on Van Tassel's small airstrip called Giant Rock Airport. Over the years, every famous contactee of the period appeared personally at these conventions, and many more not-so-famous ones. References often state that the first and most famous contactee, George Adamski, pointedly boycotted these conventions. Anywho, Van Tassel founded a metaphysics research organization called the Ministry of Universal Wisdom and the College of Universal Wisdom to codify the spiritual revelations he claimed to be receiving via communications with people from space. He published and distributed Proceedings of the College of Universal Wisdom from 1953 until his death in 1978. So this is the thing. So the original contactees were dispensing wisdom. There was not gloom and doom with this man's message, nor with George Adamski. It was metaphysics. This is the law of one material is what I'm trying to connect us to in the 80s, and the Seth material. And you know, there's most of the New Age thinking is an extension of this. Even a Course in Miracles. It's about, and this is what I was even hearing this morning from Michael Salla. Michael Salla's latest YouTube drop is about how the Federation is helping us go from 3D to 5D. They've kind of sheltered us in this 3D experience so we don't face our manifestations as quickly. We have time. Because in the 5D environment, everything you think comes immediately to pass and it's visible to everybody else. That's why there's no line, because you just manifest everything in your light body and everybody can see it because they're in their light bodies too. And it's a more rarefied air, so to speak. Anywho, the 1950s was just a different time. Eisenhower was a great president who became awake to the subterfuge of the deep state in the CIA, and passed that warning on to John F. Kennedy. John F. Kennedy continued meeting with the good extraterrestrials and was planning on going for universal peace with the Soviet Union, and ending the Federal Reserve System. You know, he was going to make the great move that would have consolidated the later half of the 20th century, consolidated the true peace. And he was killed, and we have not had that peace. And as long as we do not have peace, we do not have the leisure and the time to really reflect and connect with our space brothers and sisters. You see, we're only left with who's the enemy. There's an enemy on the earth and there's an extraterrestrial enemy, and our government has to protect us from both at all times, or it's not doing its job, So all I'm saying is that our earliest encounters back in the 50s were from Valiant Thor from Venus and the Galactic Federation types that met George Van Tassel. These were Nordic-looking aliens, I don't know, maybe European, Caucasian, Caucasoid in some sense. They certainly were human-looking. That was also the experience of Albert Billy Meier, the Swiss contactee. Meier's contactees were humanoid, even if they were from a different universe, the doll system. The point I'm making is that the dark-eyed gray alien, which is they're just some goggles. Those aren't the being's eyes; those are like goggles. Anywho, the dark goggled gray alien was not always the quintessential alien. When you think of alien, that wasn't always the type that popped in your head. You see, this happened because this alien was the type that was abducting humans and mutilating cattle in the American Southwest, or has been doing this since the late 70s. Linda Moulton Howe's books, A Strange Harvest, that was the first one. And then she has An Alien Harvest, that's the second one. there's one more I'm not naming, but you can look her up. And she's on YouTube, certainly. So these books paint a clear picture of extraterrestrial involvement in animal mutilations of cattle in particular, and in particular of pericardial heart sacs, tongues, eyelids, and colons. Okay, so these books make the case that a greater intelligence was performing these surgical operations on cows, greater than the human intelligence, because there'd be no blood. Okay, I'm sorry, human, we do leave blood. I mean, if you're cutting a cow open to take out his pericardial sac, you're going to spill blood. Okay, and there's no tracks. We would take a vehicle, a jeep or some kind of vehicle up there. Even if we landed with the helicopter, I mean, human beings our vehicles do leave tracks. So there would never be. And this is still going on. 2020, 2016, and Oregon, as well as still in Colorado. It's been the American Southwest and the West. These bloodless, trackless mutilations have occurred. Okay, so this is the story. Linda Moulton Howe, simply a journalist who followed the story to its logical conclusion. A sheriff just told her, Linda, this isn't human. And when the sheriff told her that, and I mean, when she, it only takes one sort of pathological analysis or to, analyze these cows to know it's like laser-like precision. It just doesn't make sense that the humans aren't doing this in a field, just leaving the animal. Oh gosh, it's just remarkable. And the fact that it's been going on since like 78, 79, before I was even born, and it's still just not. And then you have South Park with Cartman, getting abducted in the field of cows. He's abducted in the anal probe and all this, and you see all just to kind of mock us. And unfortunately, the facts are, since that time, since the 90s, that's what Catherine Austin Fitts, that's what she dropped on Tucker Carlson's show. The facts don't lie. The elite began building underground in the 90s. Instead of focusing to fix and help our infrastructure, they've been building underground since the 90s. They turned loose the internet, right? I mean, the internet was kind of turned loose, if you will, and given away to giant corporations. And they're now giving ground to the AI for the data centers, and they seem to have no long-term plan to help really control AI or truly integrate AI into human growth corridors. Like right now, the data centers are fighting for the water with the farmers. How housing developments will need the same water and electricity that these data centers will require. And so we're set to compete against AI in the short-term future because of some long-term utopian goal that, I guess, when AI becomes sentient and can fix all these problems that it's creating right now, that we're creating, it's just a remarkable fantasy. It's colliding with head-on realities of drought and catastrophic shortages and failures. Or it's just remarkable times. Anywho, so now we're trying to. It seems like it's the wild, wild west, really, is what's going on with Google taking on OpenAI and Meta, who are all in some sense competing in a way with China or the Chinese AI and the Chinese AI companies, even though it might not be as clear to China and to the Chinese companies why the Western AI is competing, or it's a competition. Nevertheless, getting back to my actual topic, the fact is that authors from Whitley Strieber, he was one of the quintessential. Communion was his first book, Whitley Strieber, and he writes the forwards to this new book by Jeff Selver I was referencing earlier. The book by Jeff Selver, which I have not read, are E.T.s building deep earth housing for human. Sorry, that's the title of the episode. Jeff Selver's book is The Rising and the Alien Plan to Build an Enlightened City on Earth. And I'm immediately suspicious when that says that the Greys are really from a different dimension, and it's remarkable. And Whitley, falls in love with his gray hybrid children. If you follow Whitley Strieber, he starts off being frightened, abducted, but he ends up realizing, oh, I've fathered children. I've created these hybrids. You see, they've made them into they're selling it to us. They're selling us our own destruction in the creation of a hybrid species that we're building, that according to Linda Moulton Howe, we're building housing for underground. Okay. This must not have been the first episode she did on topic, because I watched most of the episode and she didn't go that much in depth into the underground housing, for the human hybrids. This is all interesting to me because it's come out. Michael Sala and Dan Winter and others have spoken out against Elena Danaan now. But Elena Danaan's claim was that these gray hybrids were on the way. They were in a ship. They were coming to Earth to invade us, and the Galactic Federation took them out, detonated those ships. And so now, if all this is I do not want that to be a lie, because it definitely seems the hybrid gray alien story is a very dark one. It's very real to me. I see this as being a very likely reality. So the fact is that of all the extraterrestrial races, none of the other ones in the Galactic Federation are trying to build or breed a hybrid race with humanity. This is only one race doing that. And of course, the crop circles have warned us about this gray race. That's the only crop circle that pictures an alien. It's like a warning about that alien. Like, don't trust him. These are the fathers of deception. So they're not going to save you. They're not going to save you or your planet. That's the only crop circle that ever showed a picture of an alien, and it was a warning about that alien. Yeah, so I mean, the whole point is, if they've been here since the 60s, why have they kept themselves in the dark? Especially if Val Thor went to the Pentagon. The 50s guys were more open. Like, we're going to go to the Pentagon. We're going to live at the Pentagon. We're going to advocate for peace with the government publicly. We're not going to hide out in the shadows and abduct cattle at night. I mean, abduct cattle. We're not going to mutilate cattle at night and abduct humans and take their DNA. We're not going to impregnate women, then come back and take the baby at a very early stage, because this is the stories in the late 90s with the golden age of YouTube. You could find so many of these stories about women who would be abducted, impregnated, and then they would lose the child very early. It's you don't need to really go any further. If you can follow that train of thought, you know what's going on. And so then you'd hear about these dark-eyed children. Secure Team 10 would have a little post about it. Then he kind of goes dark himself for a while, for years. It seemed like we really didn't get much update. And then so when Elena Danaan's like, oh man, these gray hybrids, they all been eliminated. Whew, we dodged one there, right? Because the story that most of the conspiracy theorists agree on is this one grand conspiracy, right? And I just soon start with Betty and Barney Hill, because that's when everything kind of changes from the 50s onward. So Betty and Barney Hill were an interracial couple. They were actually quite important for the NAACP, being involved in the social work movement. They were actually quite public facing. And and Barney dies in 1969. He only lived 8 years after this abduction experience. Betty lived a lot longer, till 2004. So yeah, Betty and Barney Hill, they were the interracial couple that was abducted in 1961 near Lancaster, New Hampshire. As they were returning home to Portsmouth from a visit to Montreal and Niagara Falls, they were taken on board a ship, a saucer with multicolored lights. They had seen more than just the gray aliens. I mean, Betty did draw a star map of Zeta Reticuli that she received. I mean, that's where the idea they come from, Zeta Reticuli, comes from. Additionally, Barney claimed to have seen Nazi soldiers. He didn't just see gray aliens. They were like what appeared to be Nazis. This is where this term, the Dark Fleet, comes from. These humans who have black insignia, from some unknown military. This is where this idea of a deep state, a Dark Fleet conspiracy. I mean, it's all relevant because this is it's the grand conspiracy, right? That the Nazis they outwardly lose, or apparently, right? They lose the war. After invading Russia foolishly, they are defeated by the combined efforts of the Russians and the Americans. Meanwhile, they've created the Dark Fleet with the help of the Draco reptilians. You see, that's what's happened behind the scenes. They've created these flying vehicles thanks to Maria Orsich. They've they've essentially gone off world. They've gone to Antarctica. We know the Nazis were going everywhere at that time, from Tibet to, all around the world. And so and um, this is what Bird discovers when he goes to the South Pole. He's repelled. I mean, Bird's 1947 South Polar journey expeditionary force is certainly repelled by flying saucers. He's given the message, you're allowed to enter, but you are not going to come as some kind of conqueror, as some kind of Caesar figure. And then around 1955, these guys, they fly over the White House. I mean, the White House has these significant UFO flybys. This is all during Eisenhower's administration. So it seems like he's forced to make deals with this gray faction. He's kind of forced to. Looks like Truman's team made some initial contact, the MJ-12, with them, and then somewhere Eisenhower is kind of capitulates. Perhaps he doesn't want to. There's this famous Greada Treaty that he supposedly signs. We don't really know that they're able to abduct humans and take our DNA. Nobody really knows, but Hitler supposedly sees the Antichrist, right? He describes the Antichrist as intrepid and cruel. He frightened me. It looks as though this Dracoid reptilians that make a deal with the Nazis, they've also made some kind of deal with the Greys. This conglomeration, that's what's running the big corporations. In the post-World War II era, it starts to become more clear as the big banks begin to buy up the little ones, and you have this merging of the old Anunnaki reptilian bloodlines and the bankers and how they're working in perfect harmony with this new class of billionaire tech overlords towards greater human subjugation. It's just when you thought we had a chance to become free, man, humanity's going into such total misery and enslavement just since the pandemic phase, and now to know what this empire of AI is bringing. It's a new level of human subjugation while we're become subjugated to the machines and the data centers that power the machines. The most likely conclusion, is that evil extraterrestrials are essentially eliminating the current form of oxygen-based life on this planet. That's the real dark pill. It seems unlikely that the goal is to keep this planet flourishing, because it's not flourishing and it's all happening intentionally. So they are most likely going to go underground themselves for a bit. That looks to be the plan. It might be the case that the elite humans themselves will be betrayed by these evil extraterrestrials, or that they will live underground permanently. They might go off to Mars, like Elon, or somewhere else as well. This TRAPPIST system, or Europa, or who, I don't know, Titan. It just doesn't look good for the surface of planet Earth, and it seems to be happening intentionally. So the bread baskets are running low on bread, and Hoover Dam and Lake Mead are running low on water. So we have this AI utopia future, but there's dangerous shortages everywhere. And it looks much more like an end times kind of situation than a new golden age. If the Greys are truly trying to help us save the planet, man, now would be a good time. However, Linda Moulton Howe, Whitley Strieber, and Jeff Selver all ultimately point back to the Borg mine that Star Trek warned us about. Now that we know that Star Trek was simply laying out the reality of our situation in a fictional setting, it's time that we unite and claim sovereignty over our planet. Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum. Om Mani Padme Hum.